Why did consciousness and big brains evolve in Homo sapiens? It would seem that sapiens babies being useless for years would have been an evolutionary dead end. So I said last time, wow, this is a big question. This warrants whole lifetimes of research. But I did promise that we'd come back to it and talk a little bit about it. And you're looking at me like, you got it. You got it in 5 words or less. You can name that answer in 5 words or less.
Yeah, I think we can do this. I mean, it synonymizes, well, it doesn't synonymize, but it combines consciousness and big brains. And I think we know the answer for disproportionately big brains, which comes from, so I'm borrowing from Dick Alexander, my PhD advisor, who argued that there was an arms race between human populations, that there's a point called ecological dominance at which human beings become the most important hostile force for other human beings. And at that point, thinking about what competitor groups are going to do, counteracting it with your own clever strategies becomes the way to get ahead. And so basically, human against human population level conflict resulted in an arms race that enlarged our brains so we could outthink each other. And I would argue that consciousness fits that model, that consciousness is a tool deployed for novelty, and that basically, in order to outthink your human competitors, consciousness and therefore collective engagement on abstract questions was the key tool.
Okay, so I'm going to add 2 things here. I'm just going to clarify one thing you said, which is you used the term hostile forces, which is a reference to Darwin's term, hostile forces, where he was imagining, and I think he split it into biotic and abiotic, although maybe that's a later addition. He was looking at the hostile forces that individuals in species were having to deal with and seeing things like weather and climate and predators and competitors and pathogens and parasites, and seeing that these were the selective forces that species were evolving, basically away from it, or enabling themselves to be able to respond to. And one of Dick Alexander's many remarkable contributions to an understanding of human evolution was to see, in part, humans as our own most significant hostile force in human evolution. So that's one point, just slightly clarifying for those who didn't know, who might have imagined that you were just saying hostile forces because it seemed like the right words. I think they are the right words, but this is literally a Darwinian term. And then I would also say to the second part of this question, and it's all wrapped up together, it would seem that Homo sapiens babies being useless for years would have been an evolutionary dead end. This gets at the question of effectively, why parental care? Why on a continuum of ways to reproduce would you ever go away from, I'm just going to have as many kids as possible, but because that means that they're way more than I, a parent, could ever engage with, I'm never going to probably meet any of them. So lots and lots of kids, totally anonymous to the parents, all the way to what we see in humans and some other species, where you have very few children at a time, and every one of them is precious, and you invest remarkably in them. As you move, one of the ways that some of you will be familiar with, this has been called, is R versus K selection. But as you move over towards that sort of human, dolphin, wolf, other great apes, elephant end of the spectrum, you also end up with not just more and more parental care, but more and more altricial children. So we all know the word precocious, a kid who seems to be able to speak in full sentences before you're expecting them to. It's not exactly the same word, but a precocial infant in a species is one that can, like a giraffe, walk around and run within hours of being born. At the other end of the spectrum is an altricial baby, one who is helpless for a relatively long time. Well, what does altriciality get you beyond being sitting meat for a would-be predator? It basically mandates lots and lots of time with parents during which there's going to be learning. And so consciousness, big brains, plasticity, brain plasticity, neuroplasticity, behavioral plasticity, long childhoods, mandatory parental care, all of these are of a type, and they all contribute to us being the remarkable beings that we are.
Or another way to say it is that Altriciality is the unavoidable downside of something so good that it outweighs the disadvantage that you point to, which is real.